that we don't get to define stress. Our bodies define stress.
Ooh, that's good.
I was very disconnected from my body. I had bought into the idea that my body was just a thing to carry around in my brain. Basically, it was a thing to be gotten through. It was a thing to just like put your head down and work harder through. When there is tension headaches that start to come up every day, take an aspirin or take a Tylenol and just keep going.
There's a lot of commonalities to women who tie their value to and their worth to their productivity.
No amount of productivity, no amount of money or impact or anything that's going to pay that back. As a result, we just keep working at it, right?
Yeah.
We're working and working and working, and we burn ourselves out. We have to get to a really certain point where we're like, wow, I'm just not the same as I was.
I know I say my expert interviews are always special, but this one is really connected to my heart because it is with the amazing Elizabeth Gaines, who I learned so much through my training to becoming a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner.
We are living outside of our biological parameters. Handle the stress, handle the deadlines, to handle the money problems, to handle raising children, to handle all of these things. We start to get chronically underfunded in our internal function. And that starts to show up in midlife, 30s and the 40s, because we are all in this environment together. Everybody starts to get these symptoms around midlife. Now, everyone's saying, oh, it's normal. It's just aging.
Oh my goodness. And that is how we are taught as well. Hey there, sisters. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. As you know, I'm Bria Gadd, your host, and today is one of our expert interview days. And I know I say my expert interviews are always special, but this one is really, connected to my heart because it is with the amazing Elizabeth Gaines, who I learned so much through my training to becoming a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And this is really one of our first times meeting more in person because I was just on a lot of her trainings. And today we're really going to dive into, I think, burnout and the impact in perimenopause and menopause and where it comes from, what to do about it. I think it's going to be an amazing conversation. So, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Oh, Bria, I'm so happy to be here. I always love to see my trainees on the other side and what they're doing. And it's so great to catch up with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I always say to people, in my business, my understanding, everything really took off and changed for me through FDN. It was a really amazing opportunity for me to learn so much more about the human body and how to.
I feel the same. FDN transformed my life. Well, yes, now I work there.
Yeah, and you did work full time. So why don't we start with you? Because I think so much comes from our story, and you have a very powerful story. But can you remember the moment when when you finally kind of hit that point where you're like, I need to find other answers, or where you came to FDN, or what brought you here?
Absolutely. This is an important conversation because our baseline falls, and we adapt to it so quickly. And so when it's sort of falling by inches, then you don't really notice until a lot of function has been lost. We have to get to a really certain point where we're like, wow, I'm just not the same as I was. And so for me, I used to live in New York City, and my first career was a very stressful one of being a lighting designer for theater.
Oh, you've been all over the place. I did not know this.
Done a lot of different things to get where I am today. And I think a lot of us have this, this is not a unique story. I think a lot of us have started off in one place and then, found it unfulfilling or too challenging or whatever, moved to another. But all of those experiences that we had lead us to where we are and lead us to have the lens that we have. And so, if that is you, if you are a person that is seen as having jumped around or moved careers a lot, I can tell you that for me, the line is clear. Everything that you've done in your life leads you to where you are now, leads you to have the perspective that you have. That is ultimately what people seek you for.
That's fascinating and so true. It's like door after door, right? You open one door and then there's more doors and you pick the door and that all becomes a part of your story and your body's story of why you're here.
It does. And it becomes part of the lens through which you speak and experience things. And then the other people resonate with that. So yeah, it's all valid. No matter where you have started, it's all valid. Yeah. So that job was particularly stressful because you're sort of working in a vacuum, you're working in the dark, you're working 12 hours a day. just at the tech table, and then you've got, notes in the morning and a meeting after, where you're just working like 16-hour days. No exercise, no sunlight, eating it's like super fast, just being super stressed out. It was really not a happy lifestyle for me. And so I thought to myself, okay, what am I really trying to do here? What am I doing? And art is lovely and art is impactful, and I love art. I go to see theater and art galleries to this day because it's a very big part of who I am. But I wanted to put my hands on the world more directly. So I got another graduate degree in international affairs and human rights, and I started working on issues of human trafficking.
And huge swing there, huge swing. And also not any less stressful.
I was working internationally and realizing that I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the language. The only thing that I really had to offer was to sort of lay my Western American lens over everything and hope that made a difference. And I got really disillusioned with that perspective. And so I came back to New York and I was like, what am I going to do? And then I recognized that trafficking was actually a problem in America with American girls under the age of 18 who were under pimp control, otherwise commercial sex involved.
Oh my gosh.
So I started working for an organization in Harlem, which is the best organization, by the way. If you all are looking for an organization to support, it is Girls Educational and Mentoring Services, or GEMS, the best organization out there.
We'll link that in the show notes because I think that's really important for anyone listening who wants to support
that cause. Yeah. And so I started working there, and I myself didn't have great emotional boundaries. I was an overgiver. I was a person that needed to be needed, because if I was needed, then I could look at myself as a person that was worthy. I could find a way to love myself. Yeah. And what I recognized through like years of hindsight on this is that a lot of us feel like our life has to be earned back with our labor.
Ooh, that's really interesting when you say that, because I think there's a lot of commonalities to women who tie their value to and their worth to their productivity, their
productivity. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, what is my impact? How have I given back? What am I, giving to others? How am I improving the world that I inherited? And, these are all noble pursuits, but they cannot be the definition of who we are. And the end goal cannot be to pay back our own lives. Otherwise, we'll never stop working. We're never going to be able to pay that back. It is a gift, and it is an enormous gift.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of labor, no amount of productivity, no amount of money or impact or anything that's going to pay that back. So as a result, we just keep working at it, right? We're working and working and working, and we burn ourselves out.
I've never heard it actually laid out like that, but I think that's probably something we need to say again and again and again to really normalize it. It's so true. And that is almost like the heart of it, the root of it. It's like, oh, we're working to earn our spot, as opposed to being worthy just how we are, taking care of that gift. And then anything over and above is icing
on top. Yeah. I sounded cake. I was going to say, yeah. Exactly. And I think that I was absolutely a victim of that mentality for so long. And so when the girls would call me at 3 a.m, of course I would pick up the phone, because it's usually life or death. When the girls were like, hey, could you put some money in your house for me, so that I don't have to give it to the pimp, I was doing those types of things, sort of really extending myself. And then, of course, the work itself, just inside the organization. Every time the phone rings, it's an emergency. It's never not an emergency. Yeah.
There's your central nervous system, whack.
And then there's this special gift that nonprofit work gives you that I'm sure a lot of the women who are listening right now can relate to, that if you are in this type of fight flight all the time, but you're serving victims who have actually been raped, who actually are under pimp control, you feel like you're not allowed to have that trauma.
Right.
Because somebody in your orbit is experiencing it in a worse way. And so another thing that I have come to through years of hindsight and reflection on this is that we don't get to define stress. Our bodies define stress.
Ooh, that's good. because I think you're right. We do. There's a weird shame spiral that happens when we're like, oh, I shouldn't be able to feel this way. I shouldn't be able to call it stress because look at what the rest of the world is going through.
Totally. Or like, look what the girls are going through. I didn't get raped. I'm not under pimp control. I just hear about it all day and I have to like respond and react and be available to that. And so like, who am I to feel traumatized by that? Who am I to feel stress over that when it's not even happening to me? And I think that this is a lot of us deal with this. And so what I have come to understand is that I don't get to define it up here about like what makes sense in a logical way about what is or isn't stress. It is my body that defines it.
Like that, my body defines it, not my mind.
I don't actually get a say, you know? It is my body that defines stress. And so for me, it was hearing about all of this trauma secondhand. For other people, it's a job with a ton of deadlines, or where you're dealing with other people's money, or where other people's futures are in your hands. You don't get to decide what is stressful there. You don't get to define it. It is your body. Every time there is that cortisol response, it just is.
It's so true. And when I also have learned as a human in my midlife now, after living decades, and also as a practitioner, that, you know, depending on how we were raised, the environment we were raised in, our response, our quick response to stress, and our whole experience of what stress feels like in our body, it can be really accelerated, can be really sensitive versus others who were maybe raised in a very safe, secure environment, and they're like, things are less stressful to them.
That's a really interesting point, because no matter where you were raised or how you were raised, you can react anyway to real world conditions. Because like, if I was raised in an environment where I felt really safe, and I did not, just, you know, spoiler alert, but if I did, then I might come out into the real world and lose a job and like suddenly be in this very unsafe place for the first time and not be able to deal with that effectively. Whereas somebody who's like, oh, this is just the ebb and flow of like what happens. Nothing is secure. Nothing is forever. Everything is temporal. Might react to those kind of stressors in a different way. So all that saying, yes, you are absolutely correct that our upbringing, how we felt growing up, how we have learned to deal with stress, all of that is at play in terms of how our own bodies define it.
And even, you know, even like if you've had an injury or something when you were younger, I mean, your body's experience of that stress and adapting to any other stress in that one area of your body is going to play a role, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just thinking of that as we talk.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So an injury that you might have had, even if you were born with a genetic weak link, that's going to play a role. So for example, like my mother was a preemie, her mother smoked when she was pregnant with her. So I inherited like a form of asthma, and that's like a genetic weak link I'm always going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like generations deep. That's the epigenetics as they talk about it, right? That's so interesting. Things that are completely out of our control.
My grandmother smoked when she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with me except that it has everything to do with me.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a whole other podcast episode. I think was just the layers of that piece. But okay, so this was the role you were in. What were you noticing? What was happening in your body? Recognizing? Yes.
I was very disconnected from my body at that point. I had sort of like bought into the idea that my body was just a thing to carry around in my brain.
Yeah.
And that basically it was a thing to be gotten through. It was a thing to just like put your head down and work harder through. So when there is tension headaches that start to come up every day, take an aspirin or take a Tylenol or take an Excedrin and just keep going.
It's quite avoidant. You're like, shut up. That's what you're saying to your body.
Yeah. And of course, like what the body is saying all along is, hey, we have some bank account issues. We've got some cash flow issues within the body, like within what I call the vital reserve bank account. This is sort of what funds all of your body's systems.
Yeah.
And what funds any kind of response to imbalance in body systems. So when that goes on and on and on, you start getting these symptoms. They're quiet at first. So it's maybe a little bit of, oh, I can't eat that anymore because it makes my stomach upset. Or, oh yeah, I get this headache all the time. Or, you know, my vision's starting to get blurry. Or like, I'm not, or like, oh, you know, I'm not sleeping as well as I did, but you know, whatever. I'm still like, you know, it's all good.
Yeah.
And so these are really like I have notifications from my bank set up on my phone. I don't know if other people do, but I like to know, like, every morning, like, what's going on? Am I under a certain amount? Am I like, what's happening? And so these symptoms are like little alerts from the bank saying, cash flow is compromised. We've got some problems. We've got some long-term imbalances here where some systems are taking a whole lot more money than they should, and other systems are being chronically underfunded. And so we start to develop these deep imbalances, and these little tiny symptoms are what happen. Now, because we've been living in chronic stress, this is an important piece to underline, and I'm sure you've underlined this for your audience before. We are already living outside of our biological mandate. We as human beings can handle stress, and we can handle big amounts of stress under two conditions. One, that it be short-lived. Yep. And two, that it happen on occasion.
Right. Not consistently, not every day, not
Every
chronic
day. Yes. And so that's always a question that I like to ask my audiences are your big stressors short-lived, and are they only occasional?
Does anyone say yes to both? Yeah, it's no problem.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yes, no one ever says that, right? No one ever says that, and I think that we, as in the practitioner community, tend to shy away from talking about chronic stress, because I don't have an answer for my clients on that. I can't fix their relationships or their money problems or the job that they hate, or like it's just not in my wheelhouse. And so I think there is a tendency then to not tell the truth about the impact of that, because there isn't a ready answer. There isn't like a 90-day protocol answer. It just doesn't work that way. And so already we are living outside of our biological parameters.
Yeah.
Which that happens, like, we're spending so much money out of our vital reserve bank account to handle the stress, to handle the deadlines, to handle the traffic, to handle the fighting, to handle the money problems, to handle raising children, to handle all of these things. And so we start to get chronically underfunded in our internal function. And that's when we notice, yes.
You're in debt. It is compounding.
You're in debt. And so you're going to notice the symptoms of this debt start to show up in midlife, the 30s and the 40s. Whereas if you didn't have this chronic stress burden, then you would be living much longer before these symptoms came up, before the bank account started to run low.
Interesting.
Because we are all in this environment together. And because we are all on this chronic stress experiment together, everybody starts to get these symptoms around midlife in the 30s and the 40s. And now everyone's saying, oh, it's normal. It's just aging.
They just labeled it perimenopause and menopause, and they're like, well, that's what you have. Move on.
Or they've labeled it like, this is just midlife. Get used to it. And like, when you kind of ask your parents, like, did this happen to you? Oh yeah, it's just normal. It's just normal signs of aging. And so then we go to the doctor and we're like, is it normal? And so the doctor's like, let's see. So the doctor runs some blood tests and he's like, it's normal.
Within this giant scope.
And so there are some real consequences to that. One, we start to think of this as an individual problem. Like, oh, everybody else is crushing it and I'm just really tired and I can't focus. What is wrong with me? And then we go to the doctor and the doctor's like, nothing is wrong with you. And so then there's this shame of like,
so dismissive. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it is just me and I'm weak and I can't handle it.
Yeah. I'm not working hard enough.
I'm not working hard enough.
That's a big one.
Or I'm just not, I'm not as able to do well as everyone around me. And so maybe I should take the antidepressant. Maybe I should take the proton pump inhibitor. Maybe I should take
the birth control pill.
The birth control
pill.
Or the Ambien to sleep at night. Like, just because I can't handle it and everybody else can.
Yeah.
The system works. It is not working for you. It's your problem type of mentality in health that actually shows up everywhere. And I saw this with the girls because I would have to go to their Social Security appointments with them and their Medicaid appointments with them and have to kind of like help them open up their lives and explain their mistakes. And if their mistakes were, small enough, then they were worthy of help. If their mistakes were too big, then the government's going to say, hey, look, like the system works. if it's not working for you, it's your path.
Oh my goodness. And that is how we are taught as well.
And that's how we're taught in health as well. Like this is everywhere in our society because the system protects, right? So the system says, I'm perfect and I work. So if it's not working for you, it's you. It's not me. Yeah. Not the system.
And you know what? That's not even to speak like all the, so, when I hear what you're saying is obviously this chronic stress or stress that is not short term and not super frequent is a big part of what creates this deficit in the body. I always called it health debt, which is when our body starts to first whisper. And if we don't deal with it, it's going to start to scream at you. And that's when we finally do something. But the world is set up and our systems are set up to be like, oh, well, if like you are normal, we're perfect, it's your fault.
Not working for you.
Yeah.
Your problem.
And that's not even to speak, talking about this chronic stress. It's not even talking about, you're not even talking about the change in our environment, in our food, in our water, in our soil, in our air, that in our, EMF, whatever, our blue light issues as we stare at screens all the time. It's not even pointing on those.
Before we even get to any of that we're already living outside of the biological mandate before we even get to all the chemicals in the environment and the processed foods and the lack of sleep and like all of these other factors that also are costing a bunch of money out of our vital reserve bank account. So absolutely. And FDN taught us that I think no other place really teaches you that has to be counted as stress. And so I've started to define stress as anything that costs money out of the bank account.
I like that. The call to cortisol.
Yep. The call to cortisol, or like trying to produce an immune response to a food that you're sensitive to and you don't know about. That's costing money out of the bank account. That's stress. Or trying to mitigate these chemicals and like hide them in the body because you can't get them out. And so like shoving it into bone and shoving it into the brain. Like that doesn't come free, right? So all of that is stress. And again, it's defined by the body because it's the body's bank account. It's not yours. So anything that costs money out of the body's bank account is stress. And there's a ton of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a practitioner, I can't necessarily fix like the big rocks, like the job you hate or the relationship that's not working or the money problems, but I can do a really detailed inventory of what is in that environment and how long do you sit every day and what are you feeding yourself and how is your sleep and is it long enough and are you taking breaks and all that sort of stuff. And that's, not going to save tons of money for each individual stressor that I find, but it's going to save pennies and those pennies add up.
Yeah.
And then over time, that's where we get compounded savings. Vital reserve bank account. Yeah.
I love that. I love that example. I must have learned it from you because I use it as well. And I think what we can do, you mentioned earlier that like as practitioners, the type of practitioners we are, we can't fix these bigger emotional issues, but if we can create more savings of energy for someone, then they then have the energy to maybe start to chip away at these bigger things.
Totally. And we have to teach them that is their responsibility. And I'm sorry for everyone listening. It is our own responsibility to look at these big stressors in our lives. I know like when I was at GEMS, I was also in unhealthy relationships personally. I don't want to look at any of that. And I paid the price. So what eventually happened after sort of like the joint pain started and the aches and pains and the headaches and the not being able to sleep at night.
And probably the weight gain.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Was that, but then I started exercising like a fiend, right? To keep the weight off. So I'm like doing capoeira and CrossFit and I, spending way too much on exercise over the course of a decade, not helping any of this, right? Yeah. So, where exercise should be something that puts money back in the bank account, if we're exercising too much, then it becomes another thing we're spending money on.
Yep. It's a cost. It's a cost. Sometimes it's a good investment with a good ROI, like buying a home. But if you're just constantly spending money on something that doesn't have the ability to make the return, it's like buying and selling before the growth even happens in the body.
Totally. It's like investing in a car, knowing you drive it off the lot, it loses half of its value. It's never going to go up again.
Yeah.
It's not an investment. It's a tool.
Yes. It's a tool, exactly. And you better hope it's a fun one. You better like doing it, because if you're doing it for a reason other than enjoyment and like optimizing your health, I think that it's a bit of a bad investment.
And it's counterintuitive to be like, exercise less. And a lot of women, particularly, and I was one of them, resist that because we're like, if I exercise less, I'm going to lose muscle. I'm going to gain more weight. I'm already losing muscle and gaining weight. But what we don't understand is that all of that healing that we need to do from exercise needs money.
Yeah.
And so if we're spending it all on exercise, there is nothing left for healing. That's why we're breaking down at a faster rate. So sometimes when we pull back and exercise less, now we have more to spend on healing.
Yes. And that is I have just seen that time and time again. I get a lot of flack because I come from a fitness background. I get a lot of flack from my fitness women that I work with when I'm like, we will not be working out for the next 3 months. You may move. You have to move. You have to walk. You've got to stretch, but there will be no lifting of weights for the next little while.
Really, it's really counterintuitive. And when push comes to shove and you're like, no, I'm already gaining weight and losing muscle, it's really hard to flip the script on that. Yeah.
It's a mind mess. I feel like you've already alluded to this, but we were talking right before we hopped on, and I think it's such an important point. How does this chronic stress impact like the perimenopause, menopause transition?
It is my assertion that a life of chronic stress is going to lead to early menopause. And I think that we can see this because sort of the global average for menopause is 51.
Yeah.
You know anybody who didn't hit menopause until 51? No. And why is that? I think it's for many reasons, but first and foremost, it's because menstruating costs money. It costs real money out of the vital reserve bank account. And so if you're just at a place where you're getting a little bit older, the hormones are tanking, the sex hormones are sort of canary in the coal mine, in my opinion. They don't hearken disease, but they sure as heck say, I don't have the extra cash to invest in fertility.
Yeah.
And I don't have the extra cash to invest in sort of well-being, because it's the sex hormones that keep us sort of in that place. They're
the je ne sais quoi.
Life.
Yeah.
And we want to like go out and crush it, and we have motivation. Like that's the sex hormones along with fertility. So when the body is saying, oh, no, we don't have money for fertility, shut it down. That comes at a real cost to our joy for life and our motivation and our ambition.
Yeah, our just whole outlook and our sparkle, really, just that.
Absolutely, Sherry. Sex hormones give us our sparkle. And so here we are, overstressed, overspending, and the body's bank account is saying the sex hormones have been low for a decade at this point because we can't invest in fertility.
Yeah.
So the natural step after this is perimenopause, menopause.
Right.
It's happening earlier and earlier because of this chronic stress. And here's a sort of more existential piece that I want to lay on top of that, is that how many of us in our 20s and 30s curse our periods and say, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Body's listening to that.
That's interesting. I still have women that say, and I'm like, I know you don't want your period, but it's actually a really good thing.
The body's listening to that. Every cell is eavesdropping on your thoughts 24/7, and they can't distinguish between that and reality. And so if you keep saying the period is bad, period is bad, period is bad, oh, it's painful, oh, I hate it, oh, it's awful, then your body's going to do you the favor of shutting it down early.
That's a really fascinating existential crisis. It is, when to lay it out like that. And we know this to be true. I think, especially as women, we recognize how energy and environment from the outside in really makes that difference for us, just based on who we hang with. And your body's hanging out with you all the time.
So your body's hanging out with you all the time. And so how you approach your period and how you think about your period is going to affect the longevity of it.
And therefore, how you think about this transition, this perimenopause, what it means to have your ovaries retire and move into this next phase of life, I think really matters the way, because you think about it, 51, if we are actually achieving menopause at 51, which you and I can argue we're not, we still have decades left of great life where we don't have to be hormonally hijacked. every single month.
No. And where we don't have to succumb to this idea that we don't deserve hormones anymore, or they shouldn't be robust anymore, or that we have nothing to offer if we're not fertile.
Yeah.
And I think creation is really fundamentally linked to who we are as women.
Yeah.
For our body, that creation is children.
Yeah.
But there's so many other ways to create. Like I am 50 at this point. I went into menopause, I think, a little bit early. I kind of hit it around 47. I didn't have children, but I'm still a hugely creative person because that is my nature as a woman, is to create. So I write and I invent things and I think about, interesting thought experiments all the time. I'm, looking at how I can contribute to the world because that's who I am as a woman. It's not linked to whether or not I had children, whether or not I can still have children, whether or not I have an hourglass figure, which I do. But like our value as women is to create.
Yeah.
And there's so many
new ways to do that. And this, I think, propels us into an area of creation that gets to be our choice a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah. Not biologically blueprinted out for us already. We get to choose how we want to create from menopause on.
Yeah. And like when that biological mandate to have children is obeyed, that's a years long project, that's like 20 years, 20, 30 years that you're devoting.
Minimum. Some people would say longer.
Oh, for sure. Like, my dad is not done being a father. And I 50, right? No, that's funny. But for sure, that first sort of 20 years, you're hands-on every day.
Yeah.
And so in this next phase where your kids are, now self-sufficient and your fertility is shut down, but you are still a creative force because that is what you are.
Yeah.
You are still a creative force. Now you get to explore what that means for you. What you're going to be able to give to the world that is unique and is an expression of your soul and your experience and your wisdom.
This is awesome. This feels very much, I know we all want, like, women, I think especially, they're like, what's the steps then? What are the steps for me to feel better? What are the steps to like lower this stress? What are the steps, Elizabeth? But
yeah.
I think with this area, this is something we just need to continue to talk about, continue to discuss with our friends, discuss with the people we love, because it's not a quick, like, box we can check. It's something very soul deep in our culture and how we've been treated.
If there was a 1, 2, 3 of how to fix this, it would have been fixed.
Yeah.
The same as if there was one diet that was the best for human beings, we would have found it already. We would be eating it. We wouldn't be in this sort of mess of like, I like keto, I like vegan, like vegetarian, like, it's all different. And that's just the thing. So, yeah, there are some steps that you can take and that you should take.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it that is personal to you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that is where it's customizable, and what are you capable of at this stage in your life? What are going to be the quick wins, the low hanging fruit? What is going to allow you to accomplish the bigger things? That's the way they always say, what's the horrible saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat or something. And I think the same goes, there's more than one way to pay off debt financially and energetically in our body. There's a lot of different things.
In the South, we have an expression, 6 of one, half dozen of another. Oh, yeah. Which I wrote better than skinning the cat.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
My cat does not appreciate that saying. Yeah, nor does mine. Who's this sitting right over there? He's like,
I think I love this conversation. I'm glad we've really started to have it, because I think it's like sort of step 0 through 100 for women when we're thinking it's like, just have this conversation with yourself. And
yeah.
And I will say, as someone who I think as a practitioner, I'm in this space, I do know these things. I consistently have to remind myself of these things. Anytime that old voice kind of pops up where I'm like, oh, well, this is my scheduled workout, so I better do this. And my body's like, I hurt today.
I don't want to sit down. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's a fascinating thing that we go through in ourselves.
Last year, I encountered another kind of episode of fatigue where it was like, oh my God, I just cannot get over this. Like no matter what I do. And I actually had to use the metabolic chaos scorecard from FDN. I still do this like every half year because the baseline falls so quickly or rises so quickly. Oh my
Gosh, that's so smart.
I keep doing it. I'm like, oh, I am really like getting fatigued and my concentration is going out the window and like none of the things that I know how to do are working. And so I'm like de-stressing and doing all the things. Then I go to the dentist and he's like, oh, you have 2 major infections right here, right next to your brain.
Oh my goodness.
The point being that I have to remind myself by using my tools all the time so that I can track how I'm doing because life gets in the way and you do get busy and you do have an endless ability to adapt to baselines that are rising and falling and just not remember what our best was.
When you think about FDN, obviously, as I mentioned, it was a huge game changer for me. How, for the women listening, how does it help people with this, with these, not just with the tool, but like sort of the mindset and the tools and really impact this? Because obviously it's tools that you use for yourself and your clients. They're tools that I use for myself and my clients. Let's talk about that.
Just to sort of round out my CX, we ever got to like, sorry, I like you of this story, and that's fine. Is that I eventually hit chronic fatigue. And it was at that point that I could no longer just say, oh, this is normal aging because nobody else is needing to stay in bed for 18 hours a day. Nobody else is sort of like waking up that fatigued or it just got to be undeniable. And still the doctors are saying that there's nothing wrong. Nothing that they can find wrong. And so they're telling me it's in my head. They're saying you need antidepressants. And I'm like, look, I tried that route. You told me that and I bought that for years in the early stages of this. But now it is clear that my depression is because I can't get out of bed, not the other way around, that I can't get out of bed because of depression. And so that started me on, I think, something that a lot of your listeners deal with, which is what we at FDN call the cycle of trial and error. Is where it's like, what can I try? Obviously, standard medicine has no answers for me. I'm not going back on antidepressants, which make me fat and make my sex drive 0 and like really interfere with my ability to have a relationship. Like, no, I don't want to be numb. I want to be present. I want to be present in my own life. Yeah. And so, and that's not the answer for everybody. And I'm not saying that like depression isn't real, and always has a physical cause that can always be figured out. Some people do need antidepressants. That's very, very valid. But I think for a lot of us, we can go in and ask our primary care physician for an antidepressant and get it, or maybe be asked if we want one even.
Yeah.
Without us even prompting it and get it with no deeper investigation about like what is actually going on in your life, no psychologist involved, no talking at their life, nothing. And I think that like a lot of us then are saddled with the side effects of an antidepressant, which is a life that is neutral.
Yeah.
And we all deserve a life that is so much more than neutral.
Juicy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Life has highs, life has lows. I want to be here for all of it.
Yeah.
That's my legacy as a human. And that's my duty to the people around me, is to be present for myself through the highs and lows, to be present for them through the highs and lows, but not be just trying to like medicate my way out of it.
For sure. But your point around wanting more for yourself and wanting to be present for the highs and lows and the full human experience. Yeah. I don't think I know a single woman who's being honest with herself that doesn't resonate with. Like we want, especially at this stage in life, I think when we're thinking, oh, now I get to be creative for me and not just create life. Even though I'm sure that was a really wonderful experience. I have that experience, there's a lot of, but we come to a point where it's like, what now? Now I get to focus on me.
Another important layer to that is that standard medicine is only trying to get us back to neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's like neutral life, neutral feelings. When we get back to neutral, that's great when we've been like in a really bad place. But when we're at neutral, then our life is in neutral. So that's the feeling of like, I'm okay. And when you think about everything that you want to accomplish in your life and everything that is your birthright, everything that your life is meant to add up to, and all of the experiences that you're meant to have, and everything that you're meant to do in the world, I'm okay, is not going to get you there.
Yeah.
It is not going to get you there. We deserve the full range. We deserve 100%, whether that's good or bad, because it's going to be both.
Yeah. And who wants to feel, I'm okay? I mean, nobody. Like, think about the last time you felt so alive. This is a question I often ask my clients. Like, when was the last time you felt so alive that you forgot about eating because you were so excited, or you like couldn't sleep because you were so excited, not because you were so stressed, you were excited about what's coming or what's happening. And it is further and further apart for a lot of people that I speak with, a lot of women.
Yeah. And that's I think another sort of legacy of standard medicine is like, well, neutral is the sort of the best you're going to get from here on out. So, that my job is to get you to neutral. Well, maybe the doctor's job is to get you to neutral, but the FDN's job is to get you into that
8 to 10.
That 8 to 10 area where like life is full and robust and you have the joie de vivre.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great way of saying it. Yes, maybe the doctor's job is to get you to neutral, back to ground zero.
Yeah.
We're here to give you that amazing compounding savings that you were talking about. Like, we're here to teach you how to invest.
We are. And so I'm caught in the cycle of trial and error where I'm like taking every supplement out there and buying all the gadgets and listening to every podcast I can get my hands on about adrenal fatigue and, trying the ashwagandha and trying all the stuff and changing my diet and all the things and like standing on my head and chanting and whatever it is, just to like try and feel better. And this is another shame spiral I've discovered because like what worked for my friend doesn't work for me. What worked for this dude on the podcast doesn't work for me. And everybody's out there selling a single solution where it's like, it's this diet. It's this supplement, it's this gadget, whatever it is. And so what I learned at FDN, which was so valuable, is that none of this is single sourced. And therefore this idea that one thing can solve it is marketing. It's nothing more than marketing. And that's why it doesn't work for the majority of us. That's why we all have a drawer full of supplements that we don't take anymore.
Supplement graveyard.
Of it full of gadgets that we don't use anymore. A bunch of diets that we tried and put down because nothing is single sourced, because the body is not siloed, shares the same bank account with everybody. And so if one guy is spending way too much, nobody else has any money to spend. It all affects everyone else. And so once we had that one imbalance, which basically comes from chronic stress, now everybody is going to get more and more and more and more imbalance. And now you have what we like to say at FDN is metabolic chaos.
Yes.
It is no longer this thing that is findable. It's not like this idea of a root cause, also marketing. The single solution and the root cause are marketing. They're both marketing. Because maybe there was a single root cause, but not anymore.
Yeah. Now there's 14.
Now there's 14, right? And you're not going to be able to track it back. And even if you could, it doesn't matter because the original root cause has caused a bunch of damage now. So that's why we look at the body as a whole and say, okay, out of 100% function, instead of this diagnostic approach of like, what is the disease and how do I fix it?
Yeah.
We use functional tests. And the whole point is out of 100% function, what have you lost? Where? By how much? Where are we at? And once we have that picture of like, oh, okay, in our 6 major systems, we've lost 60% function in some of them, 40% in another, 80 in another. Now that's something we can work with. And so that was sort of the innovation of FDN for me and the thing that really changed my life.
Yeah, I could see it. How did you come across it?
I was like, all right, clearly I got to change my career because I just cannot like hang out in this nonprofit world anymore. And like, and it taught me what it was supposed to teach me. And I had the impact that I could have, but I got to do something else. So I want to do something in wellness, obviously, because I'm trying to get well. We always want to teach that which we most need to learn. So I happened to go to Paleo FX, which was a health conference that happened in Austin every year. No longer does, but that particular year, all of the health coaching programs were all there and they were lined up next to one another. So I could compare curriculums. I could talk to the graduates. I could see like who was smart and who was not. And I found a lot of health coaching programs whose curriculum was based on motivational interviewing, things like that. And I was like, oh, this is about compliance for somebody else's kind of protocol.
Yeah.
And I've just come from, direct service. I know about motivational interviewing. I don't need to do any of that. And then I came across FDN, which was like, run labs, interpret them, write a protocol. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I talked to the graduates and they're all smart and science-based and they're all like talking about things in a totally different manner.
Yeah.
And so it was a no-brainer for me to make the decision from there.
And what was the impact first on your body and on the people that you helped and supported and continue to?
So for me, part of the brilliant thing about the FDN curriculum is that you are your first project.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
So you run all the labs on yourself, you write your own protocol, and you do this, of course, with the aid of mentors, people who've been through the process and people who are seasoned practitioners and understand what's going on. We don't just leave you to your own devices. But let's face it, nobody is more interesting than you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Totally. So like I can look at case studies, I can look at, somebody else's lab results, but I'm going to learn the most from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I noticed when I started looking at the functional labs is that there's plenty of stuff that's wrong. There's plenty of stuff that's not optimal or ideal. Whereas when I go to the doctor's like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
So right there's validation that what I thought I knew and was experiencing that I've been told all along isn't real is real.
Yeah.
That was amazing. But then it was like, oh, there's stuff I could work on right away because there's stuff showing up on the labs. There's places where function has definitely been lost and compromised. And so, I just started like doing the protocols and immediately feeling better. And that was a real turning point for me, was to be like, oh, okay, actually black and white, here's the data.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. I find lab work so humbling in a beautiful way because you can no longer deny what is true on paper and based on how you're feeling. So this whole trial and error thing that you were talking about, that cycle that we get stuck in, really gets eliminated or shrunk down, I would say. Like there's always going to be a little bit of like, how does this work for me? But
It's way more targeted
and concept that they follow of like, you're your first person to work on is really why you see a lot of people come into FDN that don't necessarily want to be practitioners. They just want to focus on themselves, or they want to more deeply understand themselves, or maybe help a family member, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And then when you start feeling better, you're like, oh, I could do this for a career.
Yeah. Then people like, oh, maybe I want to do this.
Oh, right.
I think, and I say this quite openly, it's easier for me to be healthy because everything I do, everything I try, everything I'm interested in, everything I'm learning for work is also beneficial for my health. So
yes.
I think it is easier for people in the wellness industry to be well. And they should be. The wellness people should be more well, so you can look up to them and learn from them.
I can't even imagine what would have become of me if I had not sought out a different solution, if I had not found FDN, if I was still like lying in bed, an invalid, and not able to hold down a job and not able to impact the world. And I know that we're all out there searching and we're all within our own trial and error. And I'm, of course, going to advocate FDN. Like FDN, changed my life. But the bottom line is that we have to be invested in the outcome of our own lives. We cannot hand it to somebody else and say, well, if you don't find an answer, I don't know.
Just SOL.
Yeah, just so well, I guess that we have to be invested in how it turns out for us. Otherwise, we're not going to get out of the sick bed. We're not going to write the books. We're not going to be on the stages. We're not going to be guests on Bria's podcast.
Yeah.
We're just going to stay in bed.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, you are worthy and deserving of feeling not just neutral, but to an 8 to a 10, not because of the things you accomplish in your life, but just because you are a human.
Because that's our birthright.
Yes.
Is to have abundant well-being and to feel joyful about this beautiful world that is around us and the opportunities in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Elizabeth, this has been amazing. I feel super inspired. So I know that the women listening are going to have grabbed 100 different nuggets here. You've really walked us through, I think, so much, but maybe one of the most important pieces, which is being invested, recognizing your worth, understanding that all this comes from so many places and it's not just one cookie cutter thing. So we can't take on shame for it. But how do we learn more from you? How do we learn more about FDN? Where do we get into your world?
Yeah, so come to fdntraining.com. That is where you can actually start the course for free. So you can look at the way that the course is taught and some of the curriculum. We are also giving away to the audience something that we call our 5 labs in 5 days webinar, where we take one case study and we present one lab every day. And we've cut out large portions of that so that it won't be like 15 hours of your life. We've cut out all the Q&As and everything like that and brought it down to sort of like one manageable kind of case study where we go in depth in the labs.
Oh, wow.
And I think this will help everyone scratch everyone's nerdy itch, but also it shows you the methodology of FDN. Why these labs? How do they talk to each other? Why this and not another one? How do we not treat the paper? How do we consider the person as a whole? This particular case study is going to walk you through how we think about that at FDN and just show you the revolutionary nature of our process.
Oh, I love that. And I think we have those links, but do you want to say them? I will put everything in the show notes as well.
I don't know.
Okay, no, I was going to get all that. I will put all of those links for the 5 labs in 5 days, for going to FDN, for how to get, more into FDN Elizabeth's world. But thank you so much for this, for your energy. I see why you're so good at what you do. And you certainly are a light you're putting your imprint on the world the way you wanted to. I can see it anyway.
And I can see it for all of your listeners. I mean, I think that's really our job as practitioners and health coaches or life coaches or whatever we do, is we have to really be able to see it for our clients until they can see it for themselves. That's our job, is we're holding that space until you can see it for yourself.
Yeah.
And I see it. I am holding it for you. And I know that you're going to get there.
Oh, I love that. This was a great episode for me. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sisters, I feel like you have just gotten an amazing dose. You can listen to this over and over again, but swipe up, get into Elizabeth's world, into FDN's world, learn more about this, or just re-listen to this episode, because I think today has given you food for thought and more tools to be more in your life and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you all in the next episode.